I can do some things that Amazon would be hard for other people to do only because of my history with the company. And as the company has grown, of course, my job has changed very much. And it has, my main job today is I'm kind of I work hard at helping to maintain the culture. A culture of high standards, of operational excellence, of inventiveness, of willingness to fail, willingness to make bold experiments. I'm the counterbalance to the institutional no who can say yes. But I won't, I'm not going to be here forever. Amazon is a really, many of the traits that make Amazon unusual are now deeply ingrained in the culture. In fact, if I wanted to change them, I couldn't. If I decided tomorrow that I wish Amazon did less pioneering and more close following, I couldn't do it. The culture cultures are self-reinforcing, and that's a good thing. The people who come to the company, sometimes people come to the company and they find Amazon very boring because we don't have enough, competitive zeal. We don't wake up. Some annual planning processes in some companies literally start with who are our 3 biggest enemies, and then here's how we're going to hold them at bay or defeat them. And we don't have such a list at Amazon. It's not how our annual planning process works. And so, but if you're, on the other hand, if you're the kind of person who gets up in the morning and says, in the shower time, what can we invent for customers and what can we do differently and how can we improve that experience and so on, then it's going to be a playground. I still run into work, by the way. I took my family on vacation to France, my wife's extended family. There were about 20 of us. And we had an unbelievably good time, great food, everything. We were there for a week. I got back to Seattle and I ran into the office. I'm having so much fun.
Stop trying to do this alone. If you've got a big idea inside you, you can't do this alone. You need people around you to help you, to encourage you, to support you, to cover your weaknesses, to help you actually go off and accomplish that big dream of yours. This is one of the biggest things that I think holds people back, holds entrepreneurs back, is you're probably decently good at the thing that you want to do. You've had some experience, or you've gone and learned and figured it out, and you slowly get better as you keep practicing and keep going and doing more. And maybe at some point you even did try to hire somebody. Maybe at some point you did try to bring somebody on and it didn't work out. Didn't work out. And here's where everybody makes the mistake. You retreat and go back to say, you know what? It was just a lot faster when I did it myself. Has that happened? Has that happened to you? Ever been there? You hired somebody. You thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hire somebody. You do it. It doesn't work out. And then you go back to say, I'm just going to do this all myself. No. No. That is not the answer. That is not the answer. That's like if you go on one date and it doesn't work out, now you're never going to go on another date again. You're never going to be married. Right? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. You're living in fear as opposed to actually trying to build the thing that you're capable of building. Here's what happens. When you first hire somebody, you don't know what you're doing. Right? It's like when you first did anything, you don't know what you're doing. So why do you expect to be great at picking the right person and then treating them well and then managing them well? You don't know what you're doing. There's a guy in my movement makers who joined my Discord as well. And he was talking about how he had hired his second video editor and it didn't work out. And he had to let the person go. So he's hired 2 video editors. Both of them couldn't get his style and he had to let them go. And he's going back to editing everything himself. Now, as a short-term solution, great. Like, stuff has to get up, videos have to be edited, get them out. But don't stop searching just because you had 2 failed hires, right? Like, if you tomorrow are editing videos, awesome. But if you next year are still editing your videos, not awesome. Nope, not awesome, not anymore, right? This is how we start to raise our standards. And so the first 2 people that you hired weren't good fits. Great. Keep searching. Keep looking. Your perfect fit is out there. And as you go through some people and go through the process, you'll get better at actually finding the right person. You'll get better at it. Don't judge yourself to say, well, I suck at this. I can't hire. I'm never going to find the person. It's just faster to do it myself, right? There's that old expression, you can go fast by yourself, but you go far with a team. You have to build a team. So let's talk about how to do it, okay? Let's talk about steps, practical steps, building a team, creating the culture. Someone who now has 37 people on the team. I'm not Jeff Bezos with, I don't know how many thousands of people on his team, but 37 on our team right now. How do you go from starting up to that? Step number 1 is figure out what is the most important skill that you need that has to get done in the business that you suck at, okay? And you don't want to get better at. What do you suck at that has to get done in the business? Not something that, maybe it's a nice to have, but like it has to get done in the business. You suck at it. And not just you suck at it right now, you never want to get better at it. You're just not interested in it. Some people love this thing and you hate it and you never want to get better at it. What is that thing? That's the first person you need to bring on into your business. It could be part-time. It definitely should not be a full-time person. Here's why. 1, you don't know how to hire yet. 2, it's going to take you too long to be able to save up the money to hire somebody full-time. And 3, you're not used to managing people. So you want a part-time person. When I first started, I had interns. I had interns from high school who were helping me do a lot of the things that I need to get done, and it was part of their school credit. Nina is back! I did foreign language interns, so people came to Toronto as part of their education, being from a different country, learning English and getting job experience. You find people. I've had people volunteer to join. I've had people work 1 hour a day to join, right? Just like you need to start getting some people involved because it makes you feel like you're not alone doing this, which is a big deal. And it also starts building some traction, starts finally getting some of the things off your plate that you wish didn't exist anymore. And suddenly now they don't because somebody else is taking care of it, right? Step number 2 is you have to start asking for help. This is a big problem for a lot of entrepreneurs. You're afraid to ask for help. At the startup phase especially, like, well, what if they steal my idea? It's one of the most common questions. Have you ever felt that? What if I tell somebody my idea and they steal it, they go with it? Well, it's possible. It's possible. Very low possibility. Most people are running their own business. The amount of people who've come to me and say, Evan, I'd love your help on this, but I need you to sign this NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's like, I don't care about your idea. I have my own business to run. I've got my own channels, my own team, my own things to worry about. I'm not gonna, they think the top priority is you have some great idea that I'm gonna then take and run with, that's now my new business plan. No, and now you missed the chance to actually get some feedback and help. So you have to share your idea. The idea alone is not enough. It's the execution that really matters. So it's not just the idea that you've got, it's can you be the one to go off and create it, to make it, to birth it, to turn it into reality. And speed matters. Have you ever seen anybody with your idea, right? Air quotes, your idea, go off and win while you were still sitting on the sidelines? Right? I've seen it happen so many times. I've had so many people message me about it. It's like, I had this idea 3 years ago and I didn't do it. And now here's this person off making millions off of it. Well, what's the difference? Chances are they had less heart than you, less of a drive to do good, less caring than you. So why are they winning? Well, because they started and they asked for help. And you were trying to do it all by yourself. So you have to share your idea. You have to recruit people on board. You have to ask for help. Because those people can make the difference between you actually following through on your goals. And then step 3 is you have to mentor the people on your team. You have to care about them as humans. The next big mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make when they're hiring is, okay, this person's gonna come on, they're gonna take all the stuff off my plate so I can focus on being the CEO and then everything's gonna be great. And that's a nice theory. That kind of happens, but what you wanna think about is, this is a human working with you. You know, this is a human who's got goals and their own ambitions and their own dreams. And your job should be to help them grow as a human, that they should be better as a person by spending time with you, by being around you, and by being in your company. Most people treat people like robots. They treat them like monkeys. Okay, get this done, get that done, perfect, gone. You know, you made my life easier, awesome, that's what you're hired to do, go do your job. Where people make the mistake of is, one, not giving enough training at the beginning. Like, did you actually set somebody up for success? And the two, just not caring about them enough as a human. I'm actually starting to find it harder as I grow. It was a lot easier when I had 1 to 5 people on the team, but at 37, I don't know what everybody's up to. I don't remember everybody's projects. I'm not in as much of the day-to-day of what they're doing. I find it hard to balance everybody's goals and just stay on top of their life. And I don't know what it's gonna look like when we're at 50 people or 75 people or 100 people. I don't know what that process looks like. I'm figuring it out. You know what, I gotta ask for help as I grow. But 2 of the things that I've done that have worked out pretty well. The first is I dedicate Mondays to team days. So I have an entire day of the week that's dedicated to team. And so I'm spending that day on Zoom calls or in person, meeting with team, asking them what's going on, helping them with their projects, and just spending time with them. And so people know that on Mondays, when they save all their stuff and talk to me about it, scheduling in time for team matters. So I have different things for different days of the week. Today's a Tuesday because I'm recording, so recording is Tuesday. But yesterday was Monday, and I was spending the whole time basically on Zoom calls with team. The second thing that I'll do is a quarterly check-in with people, and we don't even talk about the business. Usually do it on a Sunday, so it's not a work day. It's a Sunday morning coffee. Every Sunday I'm spending with someone on my team. So Sunday morning, I grab my coffee, they grab whatever drink they want, and we do a session together. And we'll touch on business, we'll touch on what they're doing, but not operationally focused. Not, hey, you didn't get this thing done, or hey, how are we doing on this project? It's more like, where do you want to go with your life? What are you curious about? What are you loving about the work that you're doing here? How can I help you get to the next step? What else are you curious about? What are your other goals? Just a life conversation. And you'd be surprised at what comes out. And most people, all they really need is just somebody to listen to them and care. And sometimes action happens immediately after, sometimes it happens, the next month or the next quarter. But when you know the hopes, the goals, the dreams, the ambitions of the people on your team, the people around you, it allows you to be a much better and much more effective leader. So we took you through this, the process of startup, zero, team, all the way to now, how do you manage, your first 37 at least people in your company. But underpinning all of this is the understanding that you can't do this alone. You have a great idea inside you. You have to share it. You have to get it out there. You have to start trusting people. You have to learn the skills of hiring and managing and delegating. Because if you don't start talking to people, if you don't start bringing people on, then that great idea dies inside you. And then you're gonna look back in 5 years and find somebody who went off and made millions off of your idea. Don't let that happen.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Can you tell us a bit more about how you decide what new areas of business to get into?
Well, there are a few things that we think about when we get into new business. First of all, we want to know if it's successful, can it be meaningful in the context of Amazon's overall business? So we don't want to do things, it doesn't have to be successful. That's okay. We don't want any guarantees that the business is going to be successful before we get into it. But we do want to know that if we're lucky enough that the business is successful, it has to be meaningful. Our business is already at a scale where it doesn't make sense for us to focus on small industries. So that's one of the things that we like about digital media. It's a big industry. It's one of the things we like about Amazon Web Services. It has the potential to be a very big industry. Our retail business, retail is, the largest retailer in the world still has, single-digit market shares. These are huge, trillion-dollar markets, so retail can grow to a very large size. And so we want that. We want to know that if it's successful, that it has attractive returns on invested capital. So, we want to be able to convince ourselves that if it works, that there is a return one day on that investment. The third thing we look for is we really want differentiation. That's part of our culture. We're not very good at Me Too product offerings. I'll give you an example. I get asked, and I have been asked for the last 15 years, when are you guys going to open physical stores? And I tell people, as soon as we have a differentiated idea. Because if we were to open physical stores and do it the same way everybody else does physical stores, we would just be, if there are already 100 well-run physical stores, if we're lucky enough to do a good job and have a well-run physical store, we would be the 101st well-run physical store. And that doesn't really add anything to the world. It's a kind of redundancy that customers end up not paying you for, and it's not fun. You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure. To invent, you need to experiment. And if you know in advance that it's going to work, it is not an experiment. And so that's a very important thing. They are inseparable twins, failure and invention. And so you have to be willing to do that. And it's embarrassing to fail. It's always embarrassing to fail. But you have to say, no, that's not how this works. If I said to you, you have a 10% chance with a particular decision, a 10% chance of a 100x return, you should take that bet every time. But you're still going to be wrong 9 out of 10 times, and it's going to feel bad 9 out of 10 times. And with technology, the outcomes, the results can be very long-tailed. The payoff can be very asymmetric, which is why you should do so much experimentation. Everybody knows that if you swing for the fences, you hit more home runs, but you also strike out more. But with the baseball, that analogy doesn't go far enough, because with baseball, no matter how well you connect with the ball, you can only get 4 runs. The success is capped at 4 runs. But in business, every once in a while, you step up to the plate and you hit the ball so hard, you get 1,000 runs. And so when you have that kind of asymmetric payoff, and one at bat can get you 1,000 runs, it encourages you to experiment more. It's the right business decision to experiment more. It's also better for your customers. Customers like the successful experiments. We all have adversity in our lives. I doubt if you really, if you know somebody, any friend or anybody that you talk to, there's no lack of adversity, and by the way, that's good, because it's what teaches us how to get back up. You fall down, you get back up. It always happens, and you get certain gifts in life, and you want to take advantage of those. But I guess my advice on adversity and success would be to be proud not of your gifts, but of your hard work and your choices. So, you may be, the kinds of gifts you get in life, you might be really good at math. It might be really easy for you. That's a kind of gift. But practicing that math and taking it to the next step, that could be very challenging and hard, and take a lot of sweat. That's a choice. You can't really be proud of your gifts because they were given to you. You can be grateful for them and thankful for them, But your choices, you choose to work hard. You choose to do hard things. Those are choices that you can be proud of. If you want to be an inventor of any kind, inventing a new service offering for customers or a new product or anything, being an inventor requires, because the world is so complicated, you have to be a domain expert. I mean, in a way, even if you're not at the beginning, you have to learn enough so that you become a domain expert. But the danger is once you become a domain expert, you can be trapped by that knowledge. And so inventors have this paradoxical ability to have that 10,000 hours of practice and be a real domain expert and have that beginner's mind. Have that look at it freshly, even though they know so much about the domain. And that's the key to inventing. You have to have both. And I think that is intentional. I think all of us have that inside of us, and we can all do it, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to say, yeah, I am going to become an expert, and I'm going to keep my beginner's mind. So your question is, did I kind of anticipate what would happen over the last 22 years at Amazon? And the answer is, God, no. So, Amazon started as a very small company. It was me and a few other people. I was driving all the packages to the post office myself in my 1987 Chevy Blazer. When I raised money for Amazon, I had to raise $1 million, which I raised from 22 different investors, $50,000 each. They got 20% of the company for the $1 million. And it was 40 people told me no. So I had to take 60 meetings to get 20 yeses. The first question was always, what's the internet? And I had to walk through that. And this was 1994, early 95. And so did I anticipate, fast forward to today and the current version of it? No. It has been one foot in front of the other. And I think that is true for most businesses, where you kind of proceed adaptively. It's step by step. You figure it out. You have a success, and then you kind of double down on that success, and you figure out what else you can do, what customers want. Ever since I was 5 years old, that's when Neil Armstrong stepped onto the surface of the moon. I've been kind of passionate about space, rockets, rocket engines, space travel. I became a science fiction reader, and I've always known that I wanted to, do something having to do with space, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it for really almost my whole life. And that's one of the things, you guys will find that you have passions, and having a passion is a gift. I think we all have passions. And you don't get to choose them, they pick you, but you have to be alert to them. You have to be looking for them. And when you find your passion, it's a fantastic gift for you because it gives you direction, it gives you purpose. You can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And the best thing is to have a calling. And if you find your passion, you'll have that, and all your work won't feel like work to you. We don't meet with our biggest investors. We meet with investors who have low portfolio turns. So, investors that have, many investment funds have very high portfolio turns. They turn their portfolio multiple times per year. They're not really investors, they're traders. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different thing. But where are you going to spend your time and your energy is one of the most important decisions you get to make in life. We all have a limited amount of time, and where you spend it and how you spend it is just an incredibly levered way to think about the world. And so if you're going to spend time, explaining the stock or the company, really, we don't really explain the stock, we explain the company to people. You should do it to people who are long-term investors rather than traders. That's our point of view.
Be stubborn on vision and flexible on details. You really can't accomplish anything important if you're not stubborn on vision, because things that are important take a long time. They take teams. You can't do it by yourself, and so you really need to have a crisp idea of the vision. You need to stay incredibly relentless on that vision, but you need to be flexible on the details because you've got to be experimental to accomplish anything important. And that means you're going to be wrong a lot. And so you're going to try something on your way to that vision, and that's going to be the wrong thing, the wrong decision. You're going to have to back up, take a little course correction and try again. And so you cannot be stubborn on the details. You have to be flexible on the details.
I ask everybody to not think in 2 to 3 year time frames, but to think in 5 to 7 year time frames. To not think about, when somebody says to me, congratulates Amazon on a good quarter, which is a very common thing to say. You meet somebody, they're being nice, they looked at your financial results for the quarter, they're like, good quarter. I say thank you. But what I'm thinking to myself is, that quarter, those quarterly results were actually pretty much fully baked about 3 years ago. And so like today, I'm working on, a quarter that is going to happen in 2020, not next quarter. Next quarter, for all practical purposes, is done already, and it's probably been done for a couple of years. And so if you start to think that way, it changes how you spend your time, how you plan, where you put your energy, and your ability to look around corners gets better. So many things improve if you can take a long term. By the way, it's not natural for humans, so it's a discipline that you have to build. The kind of get rich slowly schemes are not big sellers on infomercials. And so that's something that you have to sort of steel yourself for, discipline, and teach. You can choose. We all get to choose our life stories, and it's the choices that define us, not our gifts. Everybody in this room has many gifts. I have many gifts. You can never be proud of your gifts because they're gifts. They were given to you. You might be, tall, or you might be really good at math, or you might be extremely beautiful or handsome, or there are many gifts, and you can only be proud really of your choices, because those are the things that you are acting on. And one of the most important choices that each of us has, and you know this just as well as I do, is you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. And when you're 80, which one of those things do you think you're going to be more proud of? You're going to be more proud of having chosen a life of service and adventure. What motivates me when times are rough? I find if I'm stressed about something, it's usually because I'm not doing anything about it. And so if I'm stressed about something, I'm trying to figure out, why am I stressed? I'm listening to my body as a signal that something is awry. And then I find that the stress goes away the second I take the first step of identify the source of the stress. Why am I stressed about this? What's going on? And then, talk to somebody about it. Find allies. I would say that if you can find friends who are interested in similar things or want to help you solve a problem. Problem solving is inspiring for me all by itself. As long as I have allies, there's nothing more fun than getting in a room with a group of inventors and saying, look, here's the problem. Let's invent a solution to it. And as soon as you start doing that, I find that it turns from something that might create stress into something that creates fun. A young person starting their career, I think there are probably a lot of things. Some of them are very well known and people have heard them many times. They're still true. One of those is you should always focus on, a young person should find something that they're passionate about to do. And that's not going to surprise anyone. It's a clear thing to do. It's very hard. If you don't love your work, you're never going to be great at it. I think the other thing I would suggest to any young person, even before they start their career, is to really think about their choices. Because I find young people, and when I was young, I made this mistake too. You can get very fixed on your gifts. So everybody has gifts. You have gifts and you have things that you didn't get gifted. Maybe you're extremely beautiful. Maybe you're extremely good at mathematics. There are a lot of things that you can be given. But those things can confuse you because they're not the things that construct your life. It's your choices that construct your life, not your gifts. You can celebrate your gifts. Be proud of them. Be happy of them. Actually, don't be proud of them. Be celebratory of them. But you can't be proud because they're gifts. They were given to you. You didn't earn them. You can only be proud of the things you earn. And so as I got older, I started to realize I wasn't proud of my gifts. I was always good at school. School was always easy for me. And I was always proud that I was a great student. I got A's in all my classes. I was good at math, all of that. And I thought that's who I was. But it's not true. Those are the things that are gifts. What was hard for me is deciding to work hard, deciding to use my gifts in certain ways, to challenge myself, to do things that I didn't think I could do, to put myself in uncomfortable situations. We all get, I would say to a young person, you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. Which one of those, when you're 90 years old, are you going to be more proud of? Look, we would all love all of our numbers to be smooth lines up and to the right, and that would be terrific, but that's not how it works. Those numbers are output measures. And I guess you could try to manage your quarterly earnings very precisely, but I think personally that would be a mistake. Most of the work that we put into any particular quarter happened years ago. So it's not, there aren't that many knobs you can turn during a quarter. I mean, you can, but they're like eating your seed corn if you turn those knobs. You don't want to do that. And so people, I think if you focus on the controllable inputs to your business instead of the outputs, in the long term, you get better results. So the Benjamin Graham quote here is that in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. And I think people are well advised to build a company that wants to be weighed and not voted upon. And that means having good return on invested capital and having lots of free cash flow. But if you said to me, if I said, here's a job I would reject. If somebody came up to me and said, Jeff, I want your job to be to drive up the Amazon stock price and just manage that directly. Now this might sound ridiculous to some of you, but many companies actually do this. They actually go out and they try to sell the stock. That's kind of the final output. And it's much better to say, okay, let's not do that. That's not going to be sustainable. It's kind of a silly approach. What are the inputs to a higher stock price? And you say, okay, well, free cash flow and return on invested capital are inputs to a higher stock price. Okay, so let's keep working backwards. What are the inputs to free cash flow? And you keep working backwards until you get to something that's controllable. And a controllable input for free cash flow would be something like lower cost structure. And then you back up from there and you say, okay, well, if we can improve our picking efficiency in our fulfillment centers and reduce defects. Defects are very, very costly. It's probably, reducing defects at the root is one of the best ways to lower cost structure. And so then that starts to be a job you would accept. You would say, if you're a reasonable person, you would say, I have no idea how to drive up the stock price. I can't manage that directly. It's not a controllable input. But I can make your picking algorithms more efficient. And that will reduce cost structure and then, follow that chain all along the way. That's what you do in all of these businesses.
Failure and invention are inseparable twins. Everybody wants to be inventive. If you go talk to corporate America or any institution, actually, government agencies and so on, innovation is something to be proud of. People like invention. But the problem is they don't like failure. And you cannot have invention without failure. if you already know it's going to work, it's not an experiment. And only through experimentation can you get real invention. The most important inventions come from trial and error with lots of failure. And the failure is critical, and it's also embarrassing. And so that's why people, when we're kids, we always are doing trial and error, and we're never embarrassed. You know, you watch a little toddler, and they will try for hours to put a square peg in a round hole, and it never works. But it doesn't keep them from trying. And they try things like that, and that's how they learn. And we all have that when we're little, and then as we get older, somehow it's not as cool as you get older to fail and to fall down. It looks clumsy, and so we get in our grooves, we have a set of expertise and skills, it's kind of a comfort zone, and you have to constantly push yourself to say, no, I don't care about failure. In fact, I say at Amazon, we have to grow the size of our failures as the size of our company grows. We have to make bigger and bigger failures, because otherwise none of our failures will be needle movers. And so I would see it as a very bad sign over the long run if Amazon wasn't making larger and larger failures. And if you do that all along the way, that is going to protect you from ever having to make that big, kind of Hail Mary bet that you sometimes see companies make right before they fail and go out of existence.
The most influential people in my life were my grandparents. And my mother had me when she was 17 years old. She raised me with my grandparents' help. And she was still in high school when she had me. That was not cool in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1964. But she did an incredible job. But I was lucky because I had not just her, but she married my father when I was about 4 years old. He has been a huge influence in my life. But my grandmother and grandfather were like second set of parents for me. And you learn different things from them because they're at a different stage of life and they know different things. They're calm about certain things. It was a huge gift to me. My grandfather had a ranch in Texas, and I spent all my summers there from like age 4 to 16. And he was the most self-reliant person. He did all of his own veterinary work, all the things. I mean, and to observe him solve problems and figure out how to do things with no tools and no resources and very small amounts of money, it was a huge education from an early age. So we were very lucky. One of the things that I know people who have, they don't have great family situations, and sometimes they break that cycle, and they are the ones who pull out of it. Those people are the ones I reserve my highest admiration for. As the owner of the Post, I know that at times the Post is going to write stories that are going to make very powerful people very unhappy. And
are you upset if they are writing critical stories about Amazon, which they do?
No, I'm not upset at all. When I first bought the Post in 2013, never. And I never. I would be humiliated to interfere. I would be so embarrassed. I would turn bright red, and it has nothing to do with. I don't even get so far. I just don't want to. For me, it would feel icky. It would feel gross. It would be one of those things when I'm 80 years old, I would be so unhappy with myself if I interfered. Why would I? Yeah. I want that paper to be independent. At Amazon, one of the things we try to do is have multiple paths to yes. And so here's a little thought experiment for you. If you are a junior executive at Amazon, and if Amazon did this in the typical kind of corporate hierarchy way, you had an idea. You need to get your boss to greenlight that idea, and then your boss's boss needs to greenlight that idea, and then your boss's boss's boss needs to greenlight that idea. There are probably 5 levels or more before that idea gets the go-ahead. Assume instead that you're an entrepreneur with a startup company idea, and you need venture capital. You go to Sand Hill Road, and you go to the first venture capitalist, and they tell you no. And you go to the second one, and they tell you no. Maybe your 20th one tells you yes. You got 19 no's and 1 yes, and you're still good to go.
So that venture capital model there's multiple paths to yes. There were 20 people who could give you a yes, and it didn't matter how many gave you a no. So if you want innovative thinking, you have to think about how can we you want a large number of high judgment people empowered to greenlight things. You want multiple paths to yes. And you want a system where, as a junior Air Force officer with a good idea, the first 5 people tell me no, and somehow I can still go pursue that idea. So you got to figure that's an organizational challenge that big organizations have to figure out a way to do. And by the way, I get, this happens all the time. I'll say, I don't think that's a good idea, but somebody else will greenlight it. And I'm fine with that, because usually the cost of the experiments is pretty small. Things only get expensive when they work, right? Once something works, you're like, whoa, we need to double down on that. Now, and then the spending can get heavy, and then those become big consequential decisions, and that's where the hierarchy and using the judgment of the most senior people to me, this really helps.
Well, 2 pizza teams is something that we've been preaching at Amazon almost from the very beginning, and it's a simple idea, which is no team should be so large that it cannot be fed with just 2 pizzas. And so obviously to do great things you need big teams, but you need to subdivide them. And the reason that it's so helpful is because there's a we humans grew up around campfires and telling each other stories, and you're sitting at tables tonight that have about 10 people at each table. 10 people, maybe 12 people, is the perfect size to have a natural human coordination without a lot of structure. And if you want to have a big group of 100 people or 500 people organized, you have to have a lot of structure to make that work. And so if you can arrange to do big things with a multitude of small teams, and that takes a lot of effort to organize that way, but if you can figure that out, the communication on those small teams will be very natural and easy.
Warren Buffett has this great quote. He says, you can hold a rock concert, and that's okay. And you can hold a ballet, and that's okay. Just don't hold a rock concert and advertise it as a ballet. Investors come in all shapes and sizes. They have different investment horizons, different approaches, different beliefs about what the right kind of portfolio looks like. And so it's not one, people use Wall Street as a shorthand, but there isn't one type of investor. They come in all shapes and sizes. And you have to be super clear about what kind of company you're trying to build, what your approach is. We laid that out in our 1997 annual shareholder letter. We said we were going to take big bets. We said they were going to fail. We said some of them hopefully were going to work. We said we were going to invest for the long term, that we were going to try to take advantage of market opportunities as they arose. And there's a certain kind of investor who is aligned with that approach. And so again, you can hold the ballet or the rock concert, and both can work. Just be clear about which one you are, and then people can self-select. I think it's the very rare idea that can be done by a single individual. Almost everything that is going to change the world, solve a problem, improve something, these are usually big efforts, and they require, a team working together to really get something important done. And that has been the story of Amazon.com. At every step along the way, we've had a team here that is making this work. I mean, I don't know, even at the smallest scale, you have to figure out how to get help from your friends, from your family members, from people that you can hire in those early days. I think without that, it would never work. I mean, you have to back up and find the right time horizon for what you're trying to do. But, at Amazon, we probably do most of our things we expect to get some results in sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But we find a lot of our, other companies that compete against us in various ways, they're often trying to get things done in, 2 or 3 years. And so we can do things that, if everything has to work in 2 to 3 years, then that limits what you can do. If you give yourself the breathing room to say, okay, I'm okay if it takes 7 years, all of a sudden you have way more opportunities. I've always been focused. When I was in Montessori school, the Montessori school teacher told my mom that I wouldn't switch tasks, and they got me to switch tasks by picking me up, including my chair, and just moving me to the new task station. I've gotten a little better about that over the years, but it's still, task switching is still a problem for me. My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets, and you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments, and if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are, by their very nature, prone to failure, but big successes, a few big successes, compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they also, they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, making bets all along, even, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do. I think probably our most important piece of intellectual property is our brand name. And I think people, and I think this is very important for anybody who's going to start a company or market an invention to understand, is that brands for companies are like reputations for people. And reputations are hard-earned and easily lost. So the most important intellectual property that a company can have is, for us, it's Amazon. It's that name, but what it stands for. And we've worked very hard to earn trust. You can't ask for trust. You just have to do it the hard way, one step at a time. You make a promise and then fulfill the promise. You say, we'll deliver this to you tomorrow, and then you actually deliver it tomorrow. And if you do that over and over again, then ultimately you can instill your company's name with a reputation. And that's, I think, sometimes people talk about brands in this very amorphous way, but for me, I like to think of it as a person, and what is the reputation that person has, and how have they earned that reputation? If you're giving a great customer experience, the only way to do that is with happy people. You can't do it with a set of miserable people, watching the clock all day.
So does that include work-life balance and all those things?
Yes, but I teach 3 leadership classes a year at Amazon. I'm a part of it. They're bigger classes, but I come in and teach a session. And I always talk about work-life balance, except I like to use the phrase work-life harmony rather than balance, because to me, balance implies a strict trade, whereas I find that when I am happy at work, I come home more energized, I'm a better husband, a better dad, and when I'm happy at home, I come in and better boss and better colleague. And so it's not, you could be out of work and have terrible work-life balance. Even though you've got all the time in the world,
right.
You could just feel like, oh my God, I'm miserable, and you would be draining energy. And so you have to find that harmony. It's a much better word. And I think for most people, it's about meaning. People want to know that they're doing something interesting and useful. And for us, because of the challenges that we have chosen for ourselves, we get to work in the future, and it's super fun to work in the future. The best advice I can give somebody is do something that you think is interesting and let the waves catch you. You know, something that I see people do, which I don't think is a good idea, is they try to chase the current thing. I saw this so much in 1997 and 1998, 1999 with respect to the internet. There were, you know, in 94 and 95 and 96 and 97, mostly the people who were, you know, the earlier you get, the more true this is, but, you know, the people who were sort of looking at this space and starting companies were genuinely interested in it. They thought it was really cool. By the time you got to 1999, like doctors were stopping, you know, like, screw that doctor thing. I'm going to start a .com company, you know, and so that really made no sense whatsoever. You know, people were sort of abandoning the things they were genuinely interested in, trying to catch a wave. And whenever you try to catch a wave, you're almost always too late. So it's better to just, I mean, if you're paddling after it, you basically have to wait in place and let it come to you.
It's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, you know, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
When I'm 80, now 90, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have in my life. And most of our regrets are acts of omission. They're things we didn't try. It's the path untraveled. Those are the things that haunt us.
What do you say to employees when you obviously have some traders in the stock who are not happy and suddenly the stock is down 25% after a quarter?
Well, since 1997, at almost every all-hands meeting, we have 2 all-hands meetings a year. At almost every all-hands meeting, I remind employees that, you know, if the stock is up 10% this month, don't feel 10% smarter, because when the stock is down 10% some month, you're going to have to feel 10% dumber, and it's not going to feel as good. And so it's, you know, ownership is, we give most of our compensation is done in terms of stock compensation, and part and parcel with ownership is a mentality of long-term thinking. You know, owners think longer term than renters do. So I have a friend who rented his house to some tenants, and instead of getting a Christmas tree stand at Christmas, they just nailed the Christmas tree into the hardwood floors of the house. No owner would ever do that. And but sometimes that's a bad tenant. You know, they're good tenants, but that's a bad tenant, and it's because, you know, this is the same old thing about, you know, nobody ever washed a rental car, and you take better care of the things that you own, but one of the responsibilities of ownership.
You shop on Amazon, and if you have something, the service you don't like.
Yeah.
So do you just pick up the phone, call your team of 700,000 people, and tell them, I don't like this, change this, or...
You know what I do? So I don't do this, it doesn't happen that often, but if I get a delivery that I don't like, maybe I don't like the way it's packaged or something, we have regular meetings of the senior executive team, and I bring the box to the meeting. And when I walk in, I haven't done this in a while, it's been a while, but when I bring in a box, everybody in the room is like, oh no, he's bringing in a box, because it's always some problem. But really the way I get feedback is primarily from my email address is very well known, and I keep it well known. And I get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day from customers, and they always have something interesting to say when something goes wrong. Because we have hundreds of millions of customers around the world, and no matter how good we are, we can still be better. You can always be better. Customers have a divine discontent, and they teach you if you listen to customers. So we watch for that, and we see patterns, and we can find places where it's not working, something's going wrong, and
that's really how I get the feedback, is from customer input. And often, in all caps, angry, you ruined my child's birthday because the gift didn't show up on time. And we take that, and what you really want to do is you take that, it's an anecdote, it's a single example, but you need to find the root cause. What went wrong deep inside the system? How did this happen? Because then you can fix it for everyone, so that particular problem will never happen again. You don't just fix the symptom, you have to fix the root cause. And that's been the secret to our operational success for 20 years.
What I want to achieve with Blue Origin is to build the heavy lifting infrastructure that allows for the kind of dynamic entrepreneurial explosion of thousands of companies in space that I have witnessed over the last 21 years on the internet. So when I think about the founding of Amazon.com, it only could work, so it take you back to 1995, July 1995, we open our doors. And this is a 10-person company. I'm driving the packages to the post office myself. And we were sitting on a bunch of heavy lifting infrastructure. Otherwise, a tiny company could never have started Amazon.com. You couldn't do it. For example, there was already a gigantic logistics network called the US Postal Service and UPS and FedEx. That would have been tens of billions, actually hundreds of billions of dollars of capital that you would have had to have laid out if you had to build a logistics network. We didn't have to do that. It existed. That heavy lifting was already done. The internet itself was sitting on top of, at that time, the long distance phone network. Again, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of capital put in place for long distance phone calls, but repurposed for the internet. Payment system. There was already a payment system. We didn't have to do that. It was called the credit card, and it had been initially put in place for travelers, and so on and so on. And you can go through, and what we were able to do is take all of that heavy lifting infrastructure and kind of reassemble it in a new way and do something new and inventive with it. And that's one lens through which you can view the founding of Amazon.com. In space today, that is impossible. On the internet today, two kids in their dorm room can reinvent an industry. That's because the heavy lifting infrastructure is in place for that. Today, two kids in their dorm room can't do anything interesting in space. You could build a CubeSat. There's not that much interesting about CubeSats. And that may change, but right now, there's just, there are certain laws of physics and certain things you need size for, and things need to be big. We need to be able to put big things in space at low cost. And so if I'm 80 years old and I can say to myself that Blue Origin did the heavy lifting, I'm using my Amazon winnings to do a new piece of heavy lifting infrastructure, which is low cost, access to space. The vehicles have to be reusable. You can't throw them away. Throw away space vehicles every time, you're never going to lower the cost. So we're trying to lower the price of admission into space so that thousands of entrepreneurs can then do amazing, surprising things. Nobody in 1995,
that much. Just
nobody in 95 predicted Snapchat.
Right.
It's like, I can't predict for you what amazing entrepreneurs, brilliant, amazing entrepreneurs will do in space. But I know if I give them low-cost access to space, some brilliant, 22-year-old is going to figure it out.
It's one of those things about what companies get sustainable. It's those that provide platforms upon which others can build. Amazon does it,
empower
Apple does it,
empower others to do things. So AWS is like that. Kindle Direct Publishing is like that. Our third-party selling business is like that. Fulfillment by Amazon is like that. Every time you figure out some way of providing tools and services that empower other people to deploy their creativity, you're really onto something.
My opinion is that I can do some things that Amazon would be hard for other people to do only because of my history with the company. And as the company has grown, of course, my job has changed very much. And it has, my main job today is I'm kind of I work hard at helping to maintain the culture, a culture of high standards, of operational excellence, of inventiveness, of willingness to fail, willingness to make bold experiments. I'm the counterbalance to the institutional no who can say yes. But I won't, I'm not going to be here forever. Amazon is a really, many of the traits that make Amazon unusual are now deeply ingrained in the culture. In fact, if I wanted to change them, I couldn't. If I decided tomorrow that I wish Amazon did less pioneering and more close following, I couldn't do it. The culture cultures are self-reinforcing, and that's a good thing. The people who come to the company, we get sometimes people come to the company and they find Amazon very boring because we don't have enough, competitive zeal. We don't wake up. Some annual planning processes and some companies literally start with who are our 3 biggest enemies, and then here's how we're going to hold them at bay or defeat them. And we don't have such a list at Amazon. It's not how our annual planning process works. And so, but if you're on the other hand, if you're the kind of person who gets up in the morning and says in the shower time, what can we invent for customers and what can we do differently and how can we improve that experience and so on, then it's going to be a playground. I still run into work, by the way. I took my family on vacation to France, my wife's extended family. There were about 20 of us. And we had an unbelievably good time, great food, everything. We were there for a week. I got back to Seattle and I ran into the office. I'm having so much fun.
So as number 1 on the list, we were talking to Steve Case yesterday, and he had been number 1, and a couple of years later, he was not on the list.
Well, you're making me really nervous.
No, don't be nervous. Just tell me what could happen that would do that to you and Amazon, and how do you prevent that? Do you worry it could all come unraveled?
Well, I kind of have this experience kind of already happened to me because you put me on the cover of Time Magazine as Person of the Year in 1999, and about a year later, the internet bubble burst. I think Amazon stock went from $113 a share to $6 or something like that. So these things happen. The thing for companies is you need to be nimble and robust. So you need to be able to take a punch, and you also need to be quick and innovative and doing new things at a high speed. That's the best defense against the future. And you have to always be leaning into the future. If you're leaning away from the future is going to win every time. Never, ever, ever lean away from the future. To be innovative, you have to experiment. If you want to have more invention, you need to do more experiments per week, per month, per year, per decade. It's that simple. You cannot invent without experimenting. And here's the other thing about experiments, lots of them fail. If you know it's going to work in advance, it is not an experiment. And what happens in big organizations, Amazon's a big organization now too, the Air Force is a big organization, is that we start to confuse experimentation with operational excellence. So operational excellence is one of our 4 key principles at Amazon. We're building a fulfillment center. We've built over 150 large fulfillment centers around the world now. We know how to do that. That is not an experiment. If we build the 151st fulfillment center and screw it up, that's just a failure. That's not the kind of failure we're seeking. We want failures where we're trying to do something new, untested, never proven. That's a real experiment, and they come in all scale sizes.
There's your completely massive and globally dominant commerce business, first party and third party. There is AWS, Amazon Web Services, which came out of nowhere and is now massive. You're in the hardware business, including Echo and Kindle and the phone, grocery delivery, payments, TV shows. You're now making TV shows, advertising. Jeff, how can you possibly do all of that?
Exhausting me.
How can you possibly do all of that and do it okay? Even okay, let alone good.
So I think one way to think about this is, what are you really focusing on? So, I'm focusing on those things that I think make Amazon unusual. Genuine customer obsession. So like every single thing you just mentioned, when our senior executives sit down and review those programs, they're looking for customer obsession. The question was, why did we expand into things like electronics, tools, and kitchen since those businesses are not today profitable? And the answer is that that it increases our addressable market size, so we can ultimately build a much larger company by entering into those new product categories. And second, while it's true that those new categories, which are only 3 years old, and by the way, electronics, tools, and kitchen is now a $600 million business at Amazon.com, which makes it one of the largest, on a standalone basis, it's probably in the top 4 or 5 e-commerce companies anywhere in the world. So that business is growing and growing very rapidly. And one of the big advantages it has a huge audience of early adopters, which is why companies like Segway choose us as the exclusive launch platform for products like that, because really early adopters are the kind of people who buy stuff like this. But that business ultimately will be, electronics in particular, in my opinion, will be our largest, most profitable business one day. When you start a new business, there are certain fixed costs that come along with starting that business. And then the business has to reach enough scale so that the profit from the business, the variable profit, can cover those fixed costs. There's no sidestepping that, and it's just a simple investment issue.
If you want another amazing Jeff Bezos video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
It doesn't happen that often, but if I get a delivery that I don't like, maybe I don't like the way it's packaged or something, we have regular meetings of the senior executive team, and I bring the box to the meeting.